Good
So,
stuff.
speaking of volatility, how did you like the tariff day? Because I know you were shorting USDCAD, so it was in your face that morning. How did you handle it?
It's all gone pretty well, and what I've done is I've stopped being an investor and rational and portfolio theory and all that stuff, and just joined fully into being a speculator. And with that mentality, we're doing all right. It's been pretty hectic, but we've been on the right side of things in general. April was about one of the wildest months I've gone through, and we're in the black, so things are good.
Who's we?
The royal we, Dale.
Huh?
I just deemed
Well,
myself
you're
king. That's the royal we.
okay. I was just wondering who who all of you were. Uh, anyway, like look, George is on record. He got out of the market. He was worried about a constitutional crisis, which we could be heading into between the administration and the judiciary. And George was just was looking for a top in USD CAD and shorted that. And so, what other instruments are you trading?
Um, I think it's a good idea to look at U.S. dollar Canada because from my point of view, it's a non-administrated rate. I really don't have much confidence in trading the euro, but for very technical view. But as far as any sort of macroeconomic or strategic point of view, I don't think it really bears watching in that way because the euro is administrated. As soon as the Trump administration gets their act together, Bessent will just sit down and decide where it should be. But Canada is different. Canada is a floating currency. And they always have to respond to the interest rate differential and also to the amount of dollars required for trade and other purposes. So therefore, the Canadian dollar is sort of like the honest broker in terms of indicating exactly what Trump is doing, what he can do, what he hasn't done. And it flew off to 146 when the market, 147 when the market had full belief.
Yeah,
In,
yeah. Now this is what I wanted to add. I know we did your interview before this. It was
yeah,
before the tariff
yeah,
announcements. So I
yeah.
know you were short USD CAD. How did you handle this day? What did you do?
Well, I just maybe it's because I spent too much time in Canada. I'm Canadian, supposedly. I hope my registered birth abroad doesn't get me kicked out of this country. But anyway, I'm a birth right citizen of America. But I just I just the massive amount of trade and interaction between Canada and the U.S. makes all of Trump's thoughts, announcements, and commentary, followed up by Lutnick and even Bessent and certainly Navarro, nonsensical. Doesn't make any sense. It's an impossibility. It's a fantasy, a complete fantasy of what he's talking about in terms of Canada. They are not a fentanyl source of evil.
So
There's
you
no.
don't want to answer. You're dancing around the question. I know you have a memory of coming in being short Canada on this day. Do you or do you not?
Well, right now I'm flat because I think the VIG's out of it.
Why? Okay, okay.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm not talking about now. I
yeah.
just it's for people to learn because you're fairly new at being a trader. I'm interested in what you did. You know, it's your first year out there. It takes time to do it. What did you do this day when you woke up in the morning and USD CAD was up 200 pips in your face, making new all-time highs?
It was just nonsensical. It wasn't a possibility. In other words, the 147 level from any sort of macroeconomic or understanding of the Canada-U.S. relationship, short of like the United States invading Canada and occupying it, made no sense. So as soon as it flew up to 147, I rather aggressively got in there and and I shorted the dollar, and it worked out quite fine. Okay, we got the first
Okay,
night.
so you used it so this was your opening position in Canada. You waited for this day to do it, even though we talked about it several weeks before.
It actually yes. As soon as he started to lambaste Canada, and also with Carney requiring to have the evil U.S. as his opposition so as he can win the election, both of them, basically Carney and Trump are both sort of in cahoots here, if you can think of that. And the Canadian dollar, right from the last quarter of last year to certainly to the 147 spike, just made no sense. Now, I don't think I was good enough to get a penny or 2 pennies out of it. But when it got to like 6, 7 cents over any sort of sense of reality, I bet fairly aggressively on that.
Are we fairly priced now?
I think we're close to something where I don't think you can outthink the market. It's probably back in your camp, Dale. I think technical analysis is probably the right way to approach it. And I'm not good enough for that. So I've exited the Canada US ever since it went down to we've had a low of 137, which is pretty well where it was last year.
Yeah.
Before all this hoopla. Now the other read I do have of the Canadian dollar is that I think Carney must have Trump as a boogeyman, as like the great enemy, and he's got to be the big hero. Pierre Poilievre, he's blowing it. He's not striding around hating the U.S. So that's why the Liberals are ahead right now, despite the fact that they were basically ready to be history like even 2 months ago. And so the Canadian dollar going down to 137 low and 138 odd where it is now, I think it's an indication that everyone's going to be rather surprised. And I think the PC, the Conservatives, are going to win the election. And it's based solely upon like how I see the trade relationships and the associations between America and the U.S. and what that means for the Canadian dollar and where the PCs are progressive conservatives, which is sort of an oxymoron, are situated now.
Okay, so do you think we have 130 in Canada?
I think we're right about here. Maybe if the Conservatives win the election, we could get back down to 134, 135. Then we'll rattle around there. But that's the market says that's rather the efficient level for currency, given the interest rate differential and also the terms of trade and also the amount of trade that's going on between Canada and the U.S. If Carney wins, then we could see another cheapening of Canada-U.S., i.e. U.S. dollar rallies, because he's an internationalist, this guy, and I'm not taking a political stance, but I forget Denmark owning Greenland. I think Carney wants to join the EU. It suits him, and so therefore he's going to try to create a crisis with the U.S. If he wins, where there is no crisis. The whole hoopla of Canada-U.S. is revealing to me that not only is Trump just in a fantasy land for Canada, but likely it justifies taking a look at everything he's done in terms of what is real and what is fantasy. And for the most part, I think I cheekily said, as I said last year and our last 2-3 years, and it's worked very well for me, that there is no Fed. I'm now saying that there is no Fed still. It's all talk, but I'm also saying there's no Trump. And so where we're going to go revert back to is just the massive inflow that the fiscal impulse is still from Bidenomics. So in many ways, it's like the ghost of Biden had won the election as far as macroeconomics and the market goes. So anyway, that's the thesis. Maybe it's a little too fantastic, but that's how I'm trading.
Okay, well, I would, there's no, I can't pull a trade out of that diatribe.
I'm sorry,
I,
Neil.
I,
We're in different we're different tribes.
all
But
right,
I
well,
tell you, I've had a hell of a good time day trading Canada. It was a lot of fun.
so you're day trading
Yeah,
now.
just in and out, back and forth. I didn't want to carry overnight, that sort of
Uh-huh.
thing.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right. Are you reading about trading? Are you anyone teaching you? I
Right.
mean, this is
Dale,
what are you doing?
I think despite the fact, my background is a portfolio manager and a very
Uh,
structural approach to investing,
it's not
but
day
I
trading.
wouldn't be surprised that how much money I've lost in trading is probably greater than what most people ever gained in their life. And in the end, we're all traders, I guess. So
Well,
I
you had
have
to,
some experience.
yeah, you had a lot of wisdom to step aside from the market
Yeah,
before we had a 20% pullback in the S&Ps. Are you
that's right.
tempted? Are you tempted to come back in at the now
I,
that
I'm
things have gotten cheaper?
I went long. What I've done is I divided my net worth, liquid net worth, and I got a chunk of money that I just can't lose. Like we all have. And then I got a chunk of money that's saying that if I lose all of it, well, the risk manager won't be happy and I won't be happy, but at least I'll survive.
Right.
And the
Smart.
size of that money is based upon the opportunity I see. And I think right now is one of the better opportunities that the market's presented itself, or at least you can correct yourself quickly if you're wrong, for a very significant bull market in the equity. And I decided this on March 17th when Roberts came out and chastised and basically gave instructions to Trump to back off, to get back into the Constitution, and that to me ended the constitutional crisis that was brewing. And since then, the courts have kept up at it, and they're just not backing down. And the Supreme Court now has a majority of Federalists with the minority liberal guys, which means that we have at least a 5-4 majority that will pretty well cut Trump off at the knees. They don't appreciate what he's been saying. They don't. They're the guardians of the Constitution, and he's gone rogue. So what this means is almost all of Trump's policies, because it was made with executive orders and not working with Congress, are null. Are null. They don't exist. Is probably the smart-ass way to say it. That being the case, I went pretty long March 17th, and then as the market, rallied pretty nicely off 5,200, and then I've actually started to deploy leverage in my spec account. I know this is sort of like playing with words, but I'm about as long as I can get, I think, given the risk.
What are you buying? What
I got
sectors?
I took off my J.P. Morgan love and Boeing, and because they're a pretty bad loss down at the bottom, I went in a little too early with them, and
Who told you to get out the banks before then?
tax did, the IRS did,
Okay.
and it's I just wanted a tax sale, and I didn't want to have it wash, so I replaced that with Goldman Sachs and RTX for a bit, but RTX was a bit of a dullard. So I have Goldman Sachs. My Canadian trade now is expressed in Magna. That's the fairly large Canadian parts and kit company. They box up all the parts in a car and send it off in a box. And then I also have I have Boeing and J.P. Morgan still, but it's in my my IRA that I set up so that I don't have a tax wash.
Any
So
view on things like semis?
nah, I'm not bright enough to ever trade that stuff.
Okay.
So I avoided it. I've never done it. So
Oils are cheap.
no, I think I can understand why oils might be cheap or rich, but I tend to avoid technicals I mean like technology that I can't understand and I can't put a present value on because it has such a large discounting for future expectations. And I also avoid anything that's just basically a political decision, which I see oil as.
Okay.
So
Well,
I'm in.
I think it's good news that you're sanguine. So you really believe, well, at least for now, that there's been a shift. Do you think we're going to, China and the U.S. are going to come to some type of agreement?
I I think that this has been 20, 30 years of build, and it's impossible to address this problem in such a short time. And thank goodness Trump doesn't have the power to address the problem as he wants, because that's a precursor to World War. And I know that sounds very dramatic, but that's the way it's always been.
Yeah,
So
I've heard this expression, George, that when the trucks and the trains stop crossing the roads with goods, troops will appear.
yeah, and I think China has a difficult problem. Is and this is just a personal read, but I don't think they have as firm a control over the country as we expect. It's pomp and circumstances and Xi and all that stuff. It looks like they got this locked down. But I think ever since Mao and then Deng's solution in Tiananmen Square, which wasn't really long ago, I think they're sort of like living by their wits. And they have a presentation that the country's solid and prosperous, is the biggest country in the world now, all this stuff, when really they have to appease various factions so that it doesn't fragment. And so trade with the U.S. is a very important part of their appeasement, such that the deal was with capitalists and other guys who want to be glorious to be rich, and China guys, was to allow this U.S. trade to get way beyond any sort of macro or sensible size, just because it bought them off. And they can't reverse. I think China would be very concerned that that if they were to at all listen to Trump, even, that their country goes to ruin. So they're carrying on. And I think the U.S. either has to say, okay, we're gonna have to put 50,000 troops in Taiwan and off we go. It's going to be bad news, or they got to back off and start to say, okay, what's the Plaza Accord type solution? What's the solution with China, such that they keep together, but we can spend 10 years to fix it? So what that means for me is that all this China stuff isn't happening. It doesn't exist. Now, sentiment's very real. And I know that I'm like 1% of the people out there, but they're rattling around. They're rattling around on fantasy and bullshit from Lutnick. I mean, just take a look at Lutnick. Is this guy at all like a Reagan or a Baker? If you remember the Reagan cabinet,
Sure, yeah,
yeah. So he's just slapdash. He doesn't know what the hell he's doing, and I don't think Trump knows what the hell he's doing. And Navarro is, he's just almost a made-for-fiction macroeconomist book guy.
Oh, they sent him to the basement.
Yeah, they got him out of sight. That's for sure.
So do you think that there's going to be a nuclear deal with Iran, or is it going to go military?
I think the big danger here is that I think Trump disagrees with everything I just said, and as it gets frustrating for him, the usual way for characters like him in power, and I know, is to have a war.
Yeah, to distract and unify.
Yeah, I mean, that's what Putin did, and I think Trump might give it a go, but I don't think Hegseth has acquired the confidence or the oversight of the Pentagon that's required for him to do this.
Okay, I don't think he'll ever be able to.
Yeah.
Do you think that's going to stop him though?
No, Reagan was bright enough to attack Grenada, which nobody gave a shit about. But
yeah,
this is a different situation altogether, and they can't like lock the guy up in a closet for another 3 years. But there's going to be a fair clipping of Trump's wings, and I don't think he has any of the what he calls the deep state, but I call it just the functioning bureaucracy and management of the government on his side. I think they all loathe him, and maybe for good reasons, maybe for bad reasons, but he doesn't really have as much power as people think.
Okay. It's a view I haven't heard from anybody. And George is a thinker. And if you want to look, he was at Salomon Brothers, and they were the kings. Okay, in the good old days, Solly, they were the Goldman of the '80s, right? Right, George?
I like to think they always were, but
Yeah.
I got
And
to
look,
admit, I got a job offer for Goldman back then, and I was the stupidest move I ever made is that I told him to bugger off, and gosh, I
yeah,
wish I took it. Yeah,
yeah. And Cargill, big
and
name in
Cargill,
commodity. Yeah,
a lot of weak guys and everything,
yeah.
and so on.
You know, as a trader now, start paying attention to the grains. Because you know what I found interesting is that, they talk about how the farmers were going to be decimated by
Yeah.
China not buying grains. Take a look at the grain charts. They've
Okay.
discounted it. They
I'll dig into
discounted it.
it. I'm probably a piker that just got onto the craps table, had a good night, and that's probably
Yeah.
going to be my doom in the end. But did quite well
Oh,
on
but
Canada.
now that you're day trading, I'd like to be your broker. Yeah, yeah. You ever see the commercial, the brown bag broker?
No,
All right.
yeah.
Well, he put a paper bag over his head. It was a parody on. It was a parody. It was a commercial a long time ago. Parody of the
Well,
unknown comic from the Gong
the,
Show, and he'd have a
the
bank of phones in front of him, wearing
right,
a
the broker
paper
I
bag.
want was Hillary Clinton's broker. What was his name? Red Dog or something like that.
I don't know.
Yeah,
She read an article in the Wall Street Journal. That's how she made that money in cattle. But the unknown broker has that paper bag over his head and a bank of phones, and this is what he does. Sounds
yeah,
good,
yes,
let's do it. Sounds good,
yes,
let's do it. Sounds good, let's do it. Sounds
yeah.
good, let's do it.
And
Anyway.
able to change the side depending upon who the incoming call was. Yeah, yeah, go long. Oh, yep, short.
Anyway, George, I wish you much success in your new trading career. But I know it's not new when I look at your background. But you know
Yeah.
what? For the heck of it, if you're going to do it, look into finding some tools that you could use that you
Well,
like.
I woulda, coulda, shoulda. I might have. I think if I could redo everything, I would have gone into. I would go into commodities, then repo, and then the last possible choice was fixed income.
Okay.
Of course, at the back in the day, it was all reversed. But
Well,
if I had joined your crowd, I think I'd be having a lot more fun now.
yeah. Well, I think that what you're going to want to look at is not things that people own, but things that people use that hurt if you drop it on your
Yes,
foot.
yes,
Right.
and
So,
that's what I stumbled in with the Canadian dollar is that
yeah.
it's not it's a utility. It's just
Yeah.
something
It's a natural resource currency.
right,
Too.
and then some. A lot of auto stuff and steel and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it's not just resources, but to think you're going to like isolate and cut off Canada is like saying that you're going to isolate and cut off all of New York, upstate New York, and actually the whole band of 200 miles wide from the northern part of the U.S. It just can't be done.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to tell tell all the flag manufacturers to stop putting on that additional star on the flag. All right, buddy. Huh?
As a Canadian, I once had my father-in-law, ex-father-in-law, leave the table in great anger. He is Canadian. On Thanksgiving, was that I made the case. This is like 20 years ago that Canada should just join the U.S. because there'd be like 22 senators that would go into the Senate that would never leave. So just like Texas used to run the Senate and House, Canada would end up running the U.S. But anyway.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, you got some political guys going. So over there.
All
Anyway,
right.
there's one thing I reject that
Hmm.
you don't have to be Republican to be bullish the stock market, and you
No,
don't have
no.
to be Democrat to be bearish.
Yeah,
Trade your trade your
that's
charts.
definitely a huge opportunity for everyone else. Is that the amount of partisan views that's being expressed loyally in the stock market and any market now is just incredible.
It's ridiculous. You got to
Yeah,
fade it. Uh,
yeah. You know.
anyway, George, my good friend, kick some butt. All right, man.
Okay,
I'll
Dale.
talk to you.
I've always enjoy this, and I hope you have me back.
I will. I will,
Okay,
man.
sir.
All
All
right,
right.
George. Pay attention to George and check him out at on X at Bicker and Brattle, and go to his Substack, the Monetary Frontier Substack, so you could read what he's thinking. And that's a
Okay.
wrap. And that's a
Good
wrap.
stuff.
That's a wrap, everyone. Don't just count your pips, count your blessings. And I'll see everyone tomorrow. Good hunting the rest of the day. I'll see you. Thanks,
Okay, Dale.
George.
Thanks a lot.
All right, buddy. That's
Bye
a
bye.
wrap, everyone. Have a great day. Good hunting. Adios.
Hey traders, this is Blake Morrow with Forex Analytix. Thanks for stopping by our YouTube channel. Don't forget to like these videos, share them, and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss any of the content that we provide here for free. Thanks for stopping by. I'll see you in the next video.